What happens when cryptic 5,000-year-old Sanskrit prophecies just collide head-on with the world's most advanced artificial intelligence?
It is quite the premise.
Right. Today, we're looking at a source that attempts to clarify the most profound mysteries of human consciousness, and it uses the most unexpected modern tool imaginable to do it.
Truly unexpected.
Welcome to a brand new deep dive. I am just thrilled you are joining us because what we are examining today is genuinely one of the most fascinating intersections of, ancient theology, linguistic decoding, and modern technology that I think we have ever encountered.
Yeah, it is a remarkable collision of eras and epistemologies, really.
Right.
We are examining this highly detailed, multi-layered argument that's presented in a YouTube video from the channel Sanat and the Eternal.
Okay, and what's the core of the video?
So the core thesis of this video is a profound claim, which is that a modern Indian mystic named Guru Siyag is the Kalki Avatar.
The Kalki Avatar. Let's make sure everyone's on the same page.
Right, for context, in ancient Hindu cosmology, the Kalki Avatar is the prophesied 10th and final earthly incarnation of the deity Vishnu.
And his job is basically to show up at the very end, right?
Exactly. Tasked with arriving at the absolute lowest point of the current Dark Age to fundamentally reset the moral and spiritual order of the universe.
Wow. And before we get into the actual mechanics of this, I want to be explicitly clear about our position here for you listening.
A crucial caveat.
Yes, very crucial. We're dealing with deeply held religious beliefs, profound spiritual claims, and highly specific theological interpretations. Our mission on this deep dive is not to validate the divine status of Guru Siyag.
Right.
Nor are we here to debunk or, dismiss the beliefs of his followers. We are taking a position of absolute rigorous neutrality here. Our goal is to unpack the fascinating architecture of the arguments presented in this source material. We want to understand the how and the why. Like, how does the speaker weave together ancient Hindu scripture, Western Christian theology, historical synchronicity, and ultimately the analytical power of ChatGPT?
It's a wildly diverse set of sources to build a case.
It really is. They construct this thoroughly modern framework for an ancient prophecy.
Precisely. We are analyzing the anatomy of a belief system and how it adapts to the modern mind. And the speaker begins this argument by confronting a very human psychological barrier.
Which is what?
The expectation of divine aesthetics.
Ah, yes. The look.
Exactly. They are remarkably candid about their own initial skepticism regarding their own guru. Because when we hear the word avatar or savior or messiah, human beings are culturally conditioned to expect a certain visual grandeur.
We want the cinematic entrance.
We really do. And the speaker confesses that Guru Siyag did not fit any of the preconceived notions of what a world-saving deity should look like.
Think about your own internal biases for a moment. Think about the last time you dismissed a potentially brilliant idea at work or in your personal life simply because the person delivering it didn't look the part of a visionary leader.
It happens constantly.
We are hardwired to respond to aesthetics and packaging. When we picture the divine, we expect the epic. When we think of Lord Rama, the seventh avatar, we picture the magnificent, unbending bow.
And with Lord Krishna, the ninth avatar, we envision the spinning Sudarshana chakra, right? The divine glowing aura.
The flawless, otherworldly beauty. We expect a savior to arrive with unmistakable authority.
Yet the source describes Guru Siyag in terms that are decidedly, almost aggressively mundane.
Mundane how?
Well, he is described as looking like a normal grandfather.
Just a regular guy?
Yeah. He was a Jat from the state of Rajasthan in India. And to give some crucial sociological context here, the Jats are traditionally a community of agriculturalists and farmers.
Okay, so working class, essentially.
Right. They are not part of the Brahmin priestly class, which is historically associated with spiritual teaching and scriptural authority in Orthodox Hinduism.
So, right from his sociological origins, he is positioned completely outside the traditional expectations of religious leadership.
Entirely outside. He wore normal, everyday clothes. He wore ordinary eyeglasses. He carried no physical weapons.
The speaker actually says that initially, this entirely normal presentation threw them into a state of deep doubt. They looked at this man and thought, all right, maybe he's a decent teacher, a good local guru.
Sure, and a nice guy.
Right. But the Kalki Avatar, the prophesied savior of the entire universe, he looks like the guy I buy vegetables from in the market.
It's a jarring disconnect.
It is. What makes this narrative so incredibly human, though, is that the source notes Guru Siyag himself felt this exact same friction.
He was very aware of it.
Yeah, he wasn't oblivious to the aesthetic demands of the public.
No, not at all. The source material details a profound moment of reluctance from Guru Siyag. He felt a deep, almost paralyzing awkwardness about taking on the mantle of a global spiritual leader.
Simply because of how he looked.
Precisely because he lacked what he called the disguise. He did not wear the saffron robes, which are, the universal uniform of renunciation and holiness in India.
He didn't have the full setup.
Right, he didn't have the long matted hair of an ascetic or the sacred ash smeared across his forehead. He felt the weight of societal expectations heavily.
So what did he do?
The source states he prayed to his own guru, Dada Gurudev, asking to be relieved of this monumental task.
Wait, his guru's name was Dada Gurudev?
Well, his given name was Baba Sri Ganganath Ji, but he was known as Dada Gurudev. And Guru Siyag basically argued that society would simply not accept a savior who refused to play the visual role of a monk.
Because he knew that people want the costume. They want the show because the show makes belief easier.
Exactly. It bypasses the intellect.
Yeah, it goes straight to our culturally programmed reverence. But the response from Dada Gurudev, according to the source, completely reframes the concept of holiness.
It's a beautiful quote.
Dada Gurudev reportedly told him, "I have dyed your entire mind and body saffron. You don't need a fake disguise."
I have dyed your entire mind and body saffron. It is a striking philosophical statement.
What's the deeper meaning there?
It argues that external signifiers, the robes, the ash, the aesthetic markers of piety, are ultimately superficial constructs.
And maybe even deceptive ones.
Exactly. If the internal essence, the consciousness itself, has been entirely transmuted and purified, which is what the color saffron symbolically represents, then the external clothing is utterly irrelevant.
It's a radical prioritization of substance over form.
And the speaker doesn't just present this as a one-off anecdote either.
Right, they tie it into a larger pattern.
They anchor this concept in a massive historical and psychological pattern found in ancient texts. They argue that avatars, throughout all of spiritual literature, consistently go unrecognized by the masses.
And, shockingly, even by their absolute closest companions.
Yes. To prove this, the speaker dives into the Bhagavad Gita, which I think is a brilliant rhetorical move.
It's a foundational text. Right, let's unpack that for a second.
Yeah, the Bhagavad Gita is essentially a philosophical dialogue set on the precipice of a massive apocalyptic war, the battlefield of Kurukshetra.
Okay.
And the dialogue is between Lord Krishna and his closest friend and disciple, the warrior prince Arjuna. Now, Arjuna and Krishna share an intimate history.
They're essentially best friends.
They have lived together, eaten together, joked together as family members and peers. And the speaker highlights a profound irony here.
Which is?
For the first 10 chapters of this dialogue, even while Krishna is delivering the most staggering, universe-altering spiritual philosophy, Arjuna does not fully comprehend the true nature of the being sitting in the chariot next to him.
Arjuna is treating it like a really intense therapy session with a brilliant mentor. He recognizes Krishna's wisdom, but he does not recognize his divinity. He is essentially blind to the supreme creator sitting 3 feet away from him.
Arjuna's human sensory apparatus is fundamentally incapable of perceiving the avatar's true nature.
Until something drastic happens.
Right. It isn't until chapter 11 that this perceptual barrier is broken. Krishna grants Arjuna what is described as divine vision, enabling him to see Krishna's Vishvarupa, the universal form.
And this is not a beautiful, comforting sight.
Not at all. It is the Mahakal form, time and death personified.
It's terrifying.
The texts describe it as possessing countless mouths, eyes, and terrifying teeth, radiating the light of 1,000 suns simultaneously exploding in the sky.
Literally consuming the universes and the warriors on the battlefield.
The sheer scale and raw, unfiltered power of reality completely shatter Arjuna's mind.
Arjuna is so terrified by this unfiltered reality that he literally begs Krishna to stop, to shrink back down into his comforting, familiar, human-sized, four-armed form.
The reality of the divine is simply too psychologically overwhelming for a human brain to process.
The speaker utilizes this specific textual history to formulate a robust logical argument, though.
Very robust. They argue if Arjuna, the greatest warrior of his age, sitting shoulder to shoulder with the greatest avatar of the era, was completely incapable of recognizing divinity without a mind-shattering display of cosmic power, how can ordinary people in the modern era be expected to recognize the Kalki Avatar just by looking at a man in a sweater and glasses?
Human sensory perception is basically positioned as an entirely unreliable tool for identifying spiritual truth.
That's the core of their defense.
Okay, I see the logical progression the speaker is making, but I think we need to view this critically.
Fair enough.
If I am listening to this and trying to evaluate the strength of the argument, my immediate thought is that this is an incredibly convenient, bulletproof defense mechanism.
It is very convenient.
If any spiritual movement wants to deflect criticism, all they have to say is, of course he doesn't look like an avatar, you just lack the divine eyes to see it. Right.
Your skepticism is proof of your own spiritual blindness, not proof of his lack of divinity. It's an unfalsifiable loop.
That is a highly astute, critical observation. From a purely sociological or skeptical standpoint, claiming that true divinity is inherently invisible to the uninitiated is the perfect theological safeguard.
It completely insulates the leader.
It insulates the leader from any external critique regarding their behavior or appearance. However, we must analyze the argument within the internal logic established by the source.
Okay, let's play along with their logic.
The speaker is not demanding blind, evidence-free faith. They are arguing that while visual aesthetics are a false metric, experiential results are the true metric.
Results.
Yes. The authority of the avatar is proven by what they can cause to happen within the practitioner, not by how they look sitting on a stage.
So the burden of proof shifts from the visual to the functional.
Exactly.
It reminds me of the underlying psychology of superhero mythology.
How so? Well, we want our heroes to wear the cape and the bright colors so we can instantly categorize them. We want that visual shorthand.
Sure, we want Superman to look like Superman.
Right. But if a completely ordinary-looking person in street clothes walks up to a burning building and lifts a 2-ton piece of concrete off a trapped civilian, the lack of a cape doesn't negate the superpower.
The action itself is the proof.
Exactly. The source is arguing that Guru Siyag is lifting the concrete, spiritually speaking, and society is too obsessed with his lack of a cape to notice the miracle.
That analogy perfectly captures the speaker's premise. But a lack of visual disqualification is only a negative defense.
It just explains why he doesn't look the part.
Right. It doesn't affirmatively prove that this specific ordinary-looking man is the avatar. To build that affirmative case, the source shifts its methodology.
Where do they go next?
It moves away from internal sect philosophy and attempts to anchor Guru Siyag's legitimacy in objective, verifiable history.
This is where it gets really interesting.
It really does. They utilize a rather staggering synchronicity involving an entirely separate, globally recognized spiritual lineage.
Yeah, this was the moment in the source material where the scope of the argument suddenly widens drastically. The speaker brings in the life and work of Sri Aurobindo.
A massive figure.
Now, if you aren't familiar with early 20th century Indian history, Sri Aurobindo was colossal. He started as a fierce nationalist revolutionary fighting against British rule, but he underwent a massive spiritual transformation while in prison.
He had a profound awakening.
He later moved to Pondicherry and became one of the most influential philosophers and yogis of the modern era, writing massive, dense treatises on human evolution and consciousness like The Life Divine.
Sri Aurobindo's intellectual and spiritual weight is universally acknowledged, and crucially, his lineage is entirely independent of Guru Siyag's.
Totally separate groups.
Entirely. So by utilizing Aurobindo, the speaker is attempting to validate their claims using third-party historical documentation.
And they look at a very specific book, right?
Yes, the source directs attention to a specific text titled Lal Kamal, or Shwet Kamal, meaning red and white lotuses.
Who wrote it?
This book was authored by Mira Alfassa, a French woman who became Sri Aurobindo's primary spiritual collaborator.
Universally known to his followers as the Mother.
Correct. And the detail pulled from this text is wildly specific.
We're talking exact dates here.
The text documents that on one exact date, November 24th, 1926, Sri Aurobindo experienced a profound cosmic shift.
What kind of shift?
He declared that on this day, the divine universal consciousness of Lord Krishna had officially descended into a physical body somewhere on Earth to begin a new phase of terrestrial evolution.
It is not presented as a vague metaphorical feeling, but as a definitive historical event in the spiritual realm.
Absolutely. In fact, in Aurobindo ashrams across the globe, November 24th is celebrated annually with immense reverence.
They formally title it Siddhi Divas, which translates to the Day of Attainment or the Day of Perfection.
It marks the precise moment a new divine operating force entered the physical plane.
So we have this highly documented specific date from a respected independent philosophical tradition. November 24th, 1926.
Keep that date in mind.
Then the speaker reveals the linchpin of this argument. November 24th, 1926 is the exact documented birthday of Guru Siyag.
Let that sink in.
The very day that Aurobindo's followers celebrate as the descent of Krishna's cosmic consciousness is the exact day Guru Siyag's followers celebrate as Avatar and Divas, the day their guru incarnated into a physical body.
The speaker leverages this historical overlap to suggest that Aurobindo, through his advanced yogic perception, was essentially sensing and documenting the birth of Guru Siyag.
It is a rhetorical strategy that attempts to pull Guru Siyag's narrative out of an isolated sectarian echo chamber
And weave it into a larger, universally recognized tapestry of cosmic events.
The narrative imagery the speaker uses to describe the mechanics of this date is vivid and mythic.
It's very poetic.
They quote Guru Siyag as explaining that on that day, Krishna, the ninth avatar of the previous age, essentially handed him the flute and then departed.
Pass the flute.
He passed the flute, transferring the entirety of the cosmic burden to him, the 10th and final Kalki Avatar, whose explicit mission is to end the current dark age and usher in a 1,000-year Satuga, an age of truth and purity.
The symbol of the flute is deeply embedded in the iconography of Lord Krishna.
What does it represent?
The flute represents the divine call, the enchanting music that draws the human soul toward the infinite.
Okay.
By claiming the passing of the flute, the narrative accomplishes two vital theological goals simultaneously.
Which are?
First, it acknowledges, respects, and integrates the absolute supremacy of Krishna in the historical timeline. It doesn't negate the past.
It builds on it.
Right. But second, it definitively states that Krishna's active jurisdiction has officially concluded.
A literal passing of the cosmic baton has occurred.
The spiritual authority required to navigate the climax of the Kali Yuga has been transferred to a new, specifically tailored consciousness.
It's establishing an unbroken chain of custody for divine authority. But what fascinated me most about the source material is that the speaker refuses to let this remain a purely Hindu narrative.
They go much broader.
If you are claiming that your guru is the final avatar meant to transform the entire planet, you have to prove that his arrival has implications for every culture, not just one geographic region.
You need universal stakes.
And to do this, the speaker makes a massive, highly ambitious leap into Western Judeo-Christian theology.
This represents a significant expansion of the argument's architecture.
Where do they look in the Christian texts?
To argue for planetary relevance, the speaker turns to the texts of the New Testament, specifically focusing on the recorded promises of Jesus.
They zero in on the passages in the Gospel of John where Jesus is preparing his disciples for his impending death and departure.
A very emotional, pivotal moment in the text.
Jesus comforts them by promising to ask the Father to send another helper or comforter. The Greek word used in the original text is paraclete, which implies an advocate or intercessor. Jesus promises that this comforter will abide with humanity forever, guiding them into all truth.
And conventionally, how is that interpreted?
Well, for 2 millennia, mainstream Christian theology has interpreted this comforter as the Holy Spirit, the ethereal, unseen presence of God within the church.
But the speaker radically reinterprets this entirely.
How do they reframe it?
To understand their reinterpretation, we first have to understand a crucial categorical distinction the speaker makes between two types of spiritual figures.
Okay, let's hear it.
Prophets versus avatars. This is a foundational premise of their argument.
Got it.
According to this framework, figures such as Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad are categorized as prophets or messengers.
They are the couriers of the divine. They deliver the mail, but they don't alter the fundamental landscape of the territory they are walking through.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it.
They bring a message.
The speaker argues that prophets arrive with a specific divine mandate or message. They offer temporary, localized assistance to righteous individuals, and they may perform miracles to validate their message.
But they have a limit.
However, they are fundamentally subject to the brutal, chaotic realities of the era into which they are born. They do not possess the power to alter the fabric of the age itself.
And they use Jesus as an example of this.
The speaker uses the crucifixion of Jesus as the prime evidence of this limitation. A prophet can be victimized, tortured, and murdered by the wicked forces of their time.
But an avatar is different.
An avatar, in stark contrast, is a qualitatively different class of entity. An avatar does not merely deliver a message. An avatar possesses the sovereign power to shift the entire yuga.
To rewrite the foundational operating laws of earthly reality and eradicate the wickedness that overpowers prophets.
Precisely.
Let's explore this through an analogy because I think it helps clarify the scale of what the speaker is claiming.
Please do.
If human history is a massive computer network struggling with deep-seated corruption, The prophets, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, were like crucial software patches.
Okay, software
You
patches.
download the patch, it fixes immediate bugs, it stops a localized crash, and it helps the system run smoother for a few centuries.
Right, it helps for a bit.
But the core architecture of the system remains flawed. Eventually, the viruses mutate, the corruption spreads again, and the system is overwhelmed.
So what is the avatar in this analogy?
What an avatar does, according to this narrative, is not issue another patch. An avatar reformats the hard drive and installs a completely new operating system.
A total reset.
They change the baseline parameters of how reality functions.
That analogy perfectly tracks with the source's claims regarding the Comforter.
How does it tie back to the Comforter?
Well, the speaker argues that Moses and Jesus, despite their immense spiritual power, ultimately left the physical plane. They departed.
Right, they didn't stay forever.
The speaker asserts that Guru Siyag is the literal fulfillment of the biblical promise of the Comforter who stays forever.
Because he left something behind.
Because he has provided a mechanism that continues his exact work with identical efficacy long after his own physical death.
And what is that mechanism?
He has left behind a reproducible technology, a specific photograph of himself.
This is undoubtedly the most provocative, radical claim presented in the entire video.
It really is.
The assertion is not that the photograph is a nice symbolic reminder of the teacher. The claim is functional and mechanical.
Highly mechanical.
They assert that meditating on this specific two-dimensional photograph of Guru Siyag produces the exact same tangible, neurological, and spiritual results as sitting in the physical presence of the living man did.
The claims surrounding this photograph are absolute. The followers state that intense focus on this image triggers an immediate awakening of the Kundalini energy.
Let's define Kundalini for those who might not know.
For those unfamiliar, in yogic science, Kundalini is described as a dormant, incredibly powerful spiritual energy coiled at the base of the spine.
And when it wakes up?
When awakened, it travels upward through the nervous system, piercing the chakras, resulting in profound states of expanded consciousness, the spontaneous healing of physical and psychological diseases.
And acting as a living initiation, right? A process known as Diksha.
Exactly. The core argument is that the photograph is functionally the guru.
And the speaker explicitly draws a line in the sand regarding previous avatars here.
You make a sharp distinction.
They acknowledge that millions of people pray to beautifully painted pictures of Lord Rama or Lord Krishna every day.
Sure.
But they argue that while those practices cultivate devotion, a picture of Krishna does not trigger a spontaneous, active, physical Kundalini initiation in the body of the practitioner.
It doesn't do the mechanical work.
Right. The photograph of Guru Siyag, they claim, is a uniquely active, living technology.
Returning to your technology analogy, the speaker is proposing that this photograph acts as the installation drive for the new operating system.
It's a plug-and-play device.
It is a highly democratic, accessible tool. It dismantles the traditional hierarchical structures of religion.
Because you don't need a middleman.
You do not need an ordained priest. You do not need to travel thousands of miles to a specific mountain ashram. You do not need to learn complex rituals.
You just need the picture.
You simply need the tool, the image, and the mental focus to engage with it. The Comforter is not an abstract, invisible spirit requiring a leap of faith to perceive. It is a tangible methodology placed directly in the hands of the individual.
Think about the psychological impact of a claim like this for a modern listener.
It's immense.
We exist in a cultural moment characterized by profound isolation and a deep-seated anxiety about being spiritually orphaned.
People feel very disconnected.
Traditional institutions are hemorrhaging trust, ancient dogmas feel increasingly disconnected from the velocity of modern life, and people feel abandoned to navigate the chaos alone.
And Jesus' promise in the Bible was, "I will not leave you as orphans."
The source is offering a highly specific, verifiable solution to that exact existential dread.
They're issuing an empirical challenge, really.
We have the technology, here is the photograph, apply your focus, and measure the results within your own nervous system.
It represents a massive paradigm shift from belief-based religion, which demands faith in historical events, to experiential spirituality, which demands practice and promises immediate subjective validation.
But there's a catch, right?
Well, to justify this extraordinary claim, to explain why a photograph of Guru Siyag possesses a power that a picture of Krishna does not, the speaker must map out the structural mechanics of the universe.
They have to show the blueprints.
They must explain the cosmic hierarchy, This brings us to a deeply intricate section of the source material.
The cosmology of the lokas, or the realms of origin.
Right. If you are going to boldly state that your teacher is the ultimate system rebooting avatar, you have to show us the blueprints of the universe to prove his credentials.
You have to explain where he ranks in the grand scheme of reality.
And the speaker becomes highly technical here, citing detailed handwritten notes produced by Guru Siyag himself.
Okay, break down the cosmology for us.
The cosmology presented is staggering in its scale. The fundamental premise is that not all avatars are created equal, because not all eras require the same level of intervention.
It depends on how bad things are.
The power and origin of an avatar are directly proportional to the severity of the cosmic disease they are sent to cure.
And the universe goes through cycles, right?
The universe, in Hindu philosophy, cycles through 4 distinct epochs, or yugas, representing a gradual but inevitable decline in human morality, consciousness, and purity.
Let's break down these cycles to understand the escalating stakes.
Okay, let's start with the Treta Yuga.
The source starts by looking at the Treta Yuga. This was an era where humanity had begun to slip from its original perfection, but the society was still relatively noble.
The darkness was present, but manageable.
To correct this imbalance, Lord Rama descended, and the source specifies that Rama originated from a spiritual realm called Satlok.
Satlok is generally translated as the realm of absolute truth.
Okay.
It is a profoundly elevated plane of existence, characterized by purity and divine order. The intervention from Satlok was sufficient to stabilize the Treta Yuga.
But it didn't last.
But as the cycle of time ground forward, the degradation of humanity accelerated.
We then plunge into the Dvapara Yuga. The moral decay has deepened significantly.
Things are getting worse.
The conflicts are bloodier, the human ego is more entrenched, the medicine from Satlok is no longer strong enough.
So the universe requires a heavier intervention. Lord Krishna descends.
But the source makes a crucial distinction here.
Krishna does not come from Satlok. He descends from an even higher, more profound, and more fundamental realm known as Alaklok, the imperceptible or invisible realm.
The logic is clear and escalating. As the spiritual sickness of the era worsens, the divine antibiotic must be sourced from a deeper, more concentrated origin point.
Exactly. Krishna's intervention from Alaklok was powerful enough to navigate the massive, destructive war of the Dvapara Yuga and impart the supreme wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita.
Which brings us directly to the present moment, the Kali Yuga.
The darkest age.
The final, darkest, most degraded epoch in the cycle. The era of supreme ignorance, rampant materialism, global chaos, and the total eclipse of spiritual awareness.
It's the bottom of the barrel.
The source argues that to combat this ultimate darkness, to not just pause the decay, but to entirely shatter the Kali Yuga and force the dawn of a new 1,000-year golden age, the avatar cannot simply come from Satlok or Alaklok.
The intervention must originate from the absolute highest, most unfathomable point of reality.
And where is that?
Guru Siyag, according to the document cited in the video, declared that his consciousness descended from Agam Lok, the inaccessible ultimate realm.
It is a masterfully constructed theological architecture.
By establishing this specific cosmology of Lokas, the speaker provides a flawlessly logical internal rationale for their claims.
It explains why Guru Siyag is uniquely equipped to accomplish what even the revered Rama and Krishna could not.
The permanent eradication of the Dark Age. The depth of the darkness in the Kali Yuga dictates that the light must be sourced from the absolute apex of the spiritual hierarchy.
It creates a narrative of epic, unfolding cosmic momentum.
It really does.
And if you are a listener absorbing this framework, it dramatically repositions your own life. It asserts that you are not just floating randomly through a Tuesday in the 21st century, dealing with mundane, modern problems.
No, you were part of a massive story.
It suggests that you are living precisely at the climax of a billion-year cosmic narrative. You are situated at the exact focal point where the final, ultimate intervention from Agamluk has been deployed to reality.
It infuses the present moment with a staggering amount of meaning and urgency.
It is a profoundly compelling narrative structure.
However, even the most intricately designed cosmology and the most persuasive historical synchronicities eventually crash into the immovable object of written dogma.
Ah, yes, the book.
And this is where the source material becomes incredibly vulnerable and fascinating. The speaker admits to hitting a massive, agonizing intellectual wall, resulting in a severe crisis of faith.
This was the most relatable part of the entire deep dive.
Truly.
Because despite all this grand sweeping cosmic geometry, despite the speaker's own undeniable personal experiences meditating on the photograph and feeling this kundalini energy awaken within their own body, their rational reading mind starts fiercely clashing with the literal words printed on ancient sacred pages.
The conflict centers around the specific foundational texts of Hindu prophecy.
Which ones?
The Srimad Bhagavatam, specifically Canto 12, Chapter 2, verses 18 and 19, and supporting passages for the Vishnu Purana.
And what are the Puranas, for those listening?
The Puranas are vast encyclopedias of ancient Indian myth, history, and theology. They are the bedrock of popular Hindu belief. And these specific verses explicitly foretell the precise circumstances surrounding the arrival of the Kalki Avatar.
And the problem isn't that the prophecy is vague.
No, the problem is that it is brutally, uncompromisingly specific.
Let's go through the checklist.
The literal, word-for-word translation of these Sanskrit verses provides a very clear physical itinerary.
Okay.
It states that the Kalki Avatar will be born in a specific village called Shambhala, which Orthodox scholars and believers currently identify as the physical town of Sambhal in the state of Uttar Pradesh, India.
So specific location, check. What else?
It says he will be born to a highly prominent Brahmin chief named Vishnu Yasha.
Specific caste and father's name, check.
It prophesies that he will literally ride a magnificent white horse named
No,
Devanatha.
right, literal white horse.
And finally, he will wield a blazing physical sword to ride across the earth and slaughter the sinners.
It reads less like mystical poetry and more like a tactical military briefing.
It is a set of objective physical criteria.
And millions of people take these verses entirely literally.
They absolutely do.
The speaker points out the real-world consequences of this literalism. Right now, as we speak, massive resources are being poured into building a grand Kalki temple in the physical town of Sambhal in Uttar Pradesh.
An entire religious infrastructure is actively waiting for a literal human baby to be born into a specific Brahmin family.
Expecting that child to eventually mount a physical horse and initiate a global holy war with a steel sword.
Which creates an immediate catastrophic cognitive dissonance for our speaker.
Because Guru Siyag doesn't fit any of that.
Because Guru Siyag, the man he believes with every fiber of his being to be this avatar, fails to meet a single one of these physical Puranic criteria.
He bats zero.
Absolutely zero.
He was born a Jat, an agriculturalist, not a high-caste Brahmin priest. He was born in the desert state of Rajasthan, hundreds of miles away from the prophesied town in Uttar Pradesh.
He never owned a magnificent white horse.
He never brandished a blazing sword to slay wicked people, so the speaker is sitting there in psychological torment.
His internal reality is fractured.
His subjective bodily experience is screaming, I feel the undeniable spiritual power of this man. My consciousness is transforming. I'm experiencing inner peace.
But his objective theological authority, the Holy Book, is screaming, the avatar must be a Brahmin on a horse in UP. We are witnessing the classic agonizing tension between the lived experience of mysticism and the rigid demands of literal dogma.
It's a tale as old as time.
The speaker possesses the undeniable empirical evidence of their own nervous system, yet the ancient text contradicts it completely.
This is the crucible that almost every major religious reformer, mystic, or paradigm shifter throughout history has had to endure.
When your direct experience of the divine contradicts the accepted written scripture, which authority do you submit to?
Do you deny your own senses, or do you declare the ancient texts flawed?
It's a moment of profound vulnerability from the speaker. He doesn't just confidently brush the contradiction away.
He is deeply troubled.
He prays directly to his guru. He says, please, you have to explain this to me, because my rational brain cannot reconcile the reality of who you are with the words written in this book.
And the method by which this crisis is resolved is, well, it is the entire reason we are doing this deep dive.
It is, without exaggeration, one of the most remarkable syntheses of ancient antiquity and cutting-edge technology I have ever encountered in the study of religion.
To resolve a millennia-old textual paradox, our speaker turns to the most advanced 21st century oracle currently in existence.
He opens up his laptop,
And he logs into ChatGPT.
The visual juxtaposition is incredibly striking.
It's surreal.
A seeker grappling with ancient, esoteric Sanskrit versus regarding the end of the world, turning to a large language model, a neural network trained on massive data sets for profound theological arbitration.
He inputs the literal Sanskrit verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Vishnu Purana directly into the AI prompt.
But crucially, He doesn't just ask for a standard English translation.
Right, he knows what the literal words say.
He asks ChatGPT to analyze these specific verses and provide the philosophical, the metaphorical, or the yogic meaning hidden within the Sanskrit.
And what the AI returns is a mind-bending etymological breakdown that entirely dismantles the literal reading.
And perfectly aligns the prophecy with his guru's teachings of internal transformation.
Let's walk through exactly how the machine decoded the sacred text. Let's start with the geographic location, the village of Shambhala.
According to the AI's linguistic analysis, Shambhala is not referring to a dusty physical village in Uttar Pradesh.
So what is it?
It utilizes the rules of Sanskrit etymology to break the compound word down into its root syllables. Sham, which translates to peace or tranquility, and Bala, which translates to place or abode.
Therefore, Shambhala is not a zip code.
It is a psychological destination. It is the inner sanctum of a perfectly peaceful, realized human mind. The avatar is born when the mind reaches absolute tranquility.
The birthplace is a state of consciousness. Okay, let's move to the sociology.
The caste system.
The prophecy demands the Kalki Avatar be born into the Brahmin caste. As we established, Guru Siyag was a Jat. How does the AI reconcile the caste discrepancy?
The AI performs a similar deconstruction. It breaks down the word Brahman into Brahma, referring to the ultimate divine reality, and Yan, meaning one who knows or possesses the vehicle of knowledge.
So it's not a bloodline.
In its original pre-societal yogic context, a Brahmin is not a social class determined by genetics or birthright. It is a description of a state of spiritual awareness.
A Brahmin is simply anyone who has realized God.
Therefore, the avatar being a Brahmin signifies arriving in a state of supreme divine knowledge, rendering the sociological caste system irrelevant.
What about the highly specific name of the father, Vishnuyasha?
The AI translates Vishnuyasha not as a physical birth certificate name, but as a title meaning one whose glory or fame comes from complete devotion to Vishnu.
Again, it is a description of a spiritual orientation, a state of profound surrender to the divine, not the name of a literal human father residing in a village. Wait, I need to jump in here and push back on this process.
Go for it.
Because we need to address the mechanics of how AI actually works.
Okay.
If I log into ChatGPT and prompt it by saying, give me a mystical, yogic, metaphorical interpretation of this text, isn't the AI just going to act like an eager-to-please sycophant?
It's designed to give you what you ask for, yes.
Isn't it just going to scrape the internet for generic New Age tropes and feed me exactly the confirmation bias I asked for? How do we know the AI isn't just hallucinating a convenient metaphor to satisfy the prompt?
That is the essential critical question. Are we just seeing a sophisticated algorithmic echo chamber?
Exactly.
What makes this specific analysis compelling and not just generic hallucination is the structure of the Sanskrit language itself.
How does Sanskrit work in this context?
Sanskrit is mathematically precise. It is built on a rigid system of root sounds called the datas and rules of derivation known as nirukta.
So it's very structured.
Highly. When the AI breaks down Shambhala into Sham and Bala, it is not inventing poetry. It is executing structural linguistics.
So it's doing math on the words.
Yes. The mystical traditions of India have always maintained that the Sanskrit language contains dual layers of meaning, the gross external meaning, which is the story, and the subtle internal meaning, which is the psychology.
And the AI is just tapping into that second layer.
The AI is simply capable of rapidly parsing the subtle etymology that literalist translators ignore. It is uncovering an architecture that is already mathematically present in the text, not generating fiction out of whole cloth.
Okay, that context is crucial. The AI is doing structural math on the language, not just writing creative fiction.
Correct.
So let's apply that math to the most famous, challenging symbols of the prophecy. You can't just make a giant white horse disappear. What does the AI do with Devadatta, the magnificent steed?
In the deep lexicon of yogic and Vedic symbolism, the horse is the ultimate, primal representation of sheer power, kinetic energy, and velocity.
Like horsepower.
We still use this linguistic remnant today when we measure engine strength and horsepower, exactly.
So the horse isn't an animal.
The AI interprets the white horse not as a biological animal, but as the Kundalini Shakti. As we discussed earlier, this is the immense, divine, feminine energy resting dormant within the human physiological system.
So riding the horse means?
The avatar riding the white horse is a profound metaphor representing the total awakening, mastery, and direction of this internal spiritual energy up the spine.
That is breathtaking. The horse is the human nervous system fully charged with divine voltage.
A perfect way to phrase it.
Okay. And the blazing sword the Avatar wields?
It is not forged of physical steel. The sword, in this etymological breakdown, represents the piercing, illuminating power of divine knowledge.
Piercing through what?
Specifically in the context of this yoga, it represents the power of the chanted mantra. A mantra is a phonetic tool designed to cut through the dense darkness of human ignorance and delusion, much like a sword slashes through physical obstacles.
Which brings us to the climax of the prophecy. The Kalki Avatar is supposed to ride out and violently slaughter the sinners of the world.
The apocalypse.
This is the apocalyptic, bloody endgame that literalists are waiting for. How does the AI process the concept of a holy massacre?
This is where the translation becomes entirely internalized and psychological.
Walk us through it.
To understand the AI's interpretation, we must briefly define the concept of the gunas in Hindu philosophy.
The gunas, right.
Everything in the universe is composed of three qualities. Sattva, which is purity, balance, light. Rajas, which is passion, action, turbulence. And tamas, or tamoguna, which is inertia, darkness, ignorance, and destructive urges.
Okay, so light, action, and darkness.
The AI interprets the sinners not as external physical human beings that need to be eradicated in the holy war. The sinners are the internal tamoguna, the dark, ignorant, destructive, animalistic tendencies residing inside the seeker's own mind.
Wow.
The Avatar's great apocalyptic battle is not fought on a physical field in Uttar Pradesh. It is fought entirely within the consciousness of the meditator. The sword of the mantra slaughters the darkness within.
This is the absolute mind-blowing aha moment of the entire narrative.
It flips everything upside down.
The speaker realizes that they have been reading a map of the human mind, mistaking it for a map of a geographical country.
A very common mistake in reading scripture.
The prophecy is not about a guy on a horse riding through India saving the world. It's a detailed, coded manual for how divine energy wakes up inside the practitioner's own body.
The battlefield is internal.
The apocalypse is the death of the ego.
And what gives this AI-generated interpretation incredible historical weight is that the speaker doesn't just isolate this event.
What do?
They immediately cross-reference the AI's output with the established documented traditions of ancient Indian mystics. They realize that this internal coding is a hallmark of true spiritual literature.
Yes, the speaker brings in the poetry of Kabir and Guru Nanak, two of the most famous revolutionary mystical poets in history.
They utilize quotes from these mystics to demonstrate that those who have actually experienced the divine have always spoken in complex, paradoxical metaphor.
They didn't speak literally.
No, the speaker references the famous analogies found in their poetry. The water in the pot and the pot in the water. Or the drop is in the ocean and the ocean is in the drop.
If you read those poems literally, you are just looking at a clay jar full of water sitting in a lake, and you are utterly confused about why it's considered holy text.
Exactly. It sounds like nonsense.
But the mystics were using that imagery to describe a profound existential reality, that the entire vast universe, the macrocosm, the ocean, exists entirely fractally inside the human body, the microcosm, the drop.
The speaker constructs a powerful historical argument here. The authors of the Puranas were not historians or journalists documenting a future physical event.
They were yogis.
They were highly advanced yogis. And like Kabir and Nanak, they wrote in this exact same symbolic metaphorical code.
They hid the truth in plain sight.
They were describing a universally accessible internal meditative process, but they deliberately cloaked it in the narrative garb of a martial epic to preserve the knowledge.
I find the layers of irony in this entire situation to be staggeringly beautiful.
It's profoundly ironic.
Think about what is happening here. You have a deeply devoted spiritual seeker, and they use an artificial intelligence, a cold mathematical machine that processes language algorithmically.
A machine completely devoid of human emotional bias.
Entirely free from centuries of caste-based prejudice and blind to sectarian religious dogma. They use this machine to reveal that an ancient, rigid, potentially violent prophecy is actually a fluid psychological metaphor for an internal journey of peace.
It's incredible.
The machine, which we often view as soulless, is the exact instrument used to strip away centuries of human misunderstanding and reveal the soul of the text.
It forces a massive, uncomfortable, but necessary reconsideration of how humanity interacts with its own ancient scriptures.
It really does.
It highlights a tragic historical pattern. Literalism consistently traps profound, liberating spiritual truths within the amber of a specific historical era, turning metaphors into rigid, exclusive dogmas.
While symbolic interpretation does the opposite.
Exactly. Symbolic, internal interpretation keeps those truths eternally relevant, endlessly renewable, and universally accessible to anyone willing to look inward.
It completely reframes how we view religion itself. And for you, the listener, I think it leaves you with a deeply challenging, perhaps even unsettling question to carry with you.
What's the question?
How many other ancient stories across all the cultures and religions of the world have we been utterly, disastrously misinterpreting?
It makes you wonder.
Are we, as a species, constantly staring at the literal water in the pot, arguing over the shape of the clay, entirely missing the ocean it represents?
Such a powerful image.
Are we waiting for literal chariots to descend from the clouds and literal swords to cleave the earth, when the ancient texts are actually just complex, coded manuals for fixing the machinery of our own minds?
It proposes a paradigm-shifting way to read human history, scripture, and ultimately our own psychology.
It really does. Well, we have covered an absolutely massive amount of conceptual ground today. Let's briefly retrace the arc of the incredible journey we just took through this source material.
Quick recap.
We began with the paradox of the ordinary, a normal-looking Jat Guru from Rajasthan who rejected the traditional aesthetic costumes of holiness, drawing profound parallels to the psychological inability of humanity to recognize the divine, as seen with Arjuna and Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita.
We then examined the sophisticated attempt to anchor this internal spiritual narrative to objective external history, utilizing the timeline synchronicities with Sri Aurobindo's philosophy and the highly specific date of November 24th, 1926.
We watched the scope of the argument expand globally, radically redefining the biblical promise of the Comforter from an abstract spirit into a tangible, democratizing spiritual technology.
A
A photograph that actively initiates seekers and bypasses traditional religious hierarchies.
We explored the complex, escalating cosmology of the lokas and the yugas, establishing the internal logic of why an avatar descending from the absolute deepest realm, Agam Lok, was theoretically required to combat the ultimate, suffocating darkness of the Kali Yuga.
We empathized with the agonizing crisis of faith experienced by the speaker when their undeniable subjective spiritual experiences collided violently with the literal, physical descriptions of the Kalki Avatar demanded by the ancient Puranas.
The physical village, the literal horse, the steel sword.
And finally, we analyzed the brilliant modern resolution to that ancient crisis, utilizing the etymological parsing power of ChatGPT to decode those literal verses into a profound psychological map of internal spiritual awakening.
A reading validated by the long-established traditions of mystics like Kabir and Guru Nanak.
It is a breathtaking masterpiece of theological synthesis, completely regardless of where you personally stand on the ultimate truth of the beliefs themselves.
A fascinating architecture indeed.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, building on the collision of worlds we've explored today.
We currently live in an era characterized by a deep, pervasive anxiety regarding artificial intelligence.
People are very afraid of it.
We are terrified that these machines will strip humanity of its soul, that they will render human intuition obsolete, and that they will trap us in a cold, deterministic, algorithmic reality. But what if, as we saw demonstrated in today's source material, the exact opposite is possible? What if AI's ability to objectively parse ancient languages, utterly devoid of the baggage of centuries of human politics, tribalism, and literalist dogma, actually ends up rescuing profound